I do not like people. That is the truth, and there is no gentle way to say it, so I will not try. My name is Alaric. I have spent 7 fire seasons now, alone, in a small room on top of a mountain, and every one of those seasons has confirmed something I already suspected before I ever took this job. I am better off with fewer people around me, not more. I am not going to tell you which mountain. I am not going to tell you which national forest, which access road, which ridge you would have to drive to in order to find the tower where I work. Some of you will think that is dramatic. It is not. If you have ever worked somewhere remote enough that nobody would hear you if something went wrong, you already know why I am careful with details like that. You have stood in an empty parking lot after a late shift, your car the only one left, and felt that particular kind of quiet that comes from being the last person somewhere. Maybe you felt it in a hospital hallway at 3 in the morning. Maybe in a warehouse after the machines shut down for the night. Maybe in a stairwell where the lights run on a timer and the timer just ran out on you. That feeling is most of my job, stretched out over 4 months at a time. Being a fire lookout sounds simple when you explain it to somebody at a bar. You climb a tower, you watch the horizon, you call in smoke when you see it. That part is true as far as it goes. What I did not understand until my first season is that underneath that simple job description sits another set of instructions, ones nobody official ever wrote down. Nobody at the district office will confirm they exist. You will not find them in the training packet they hand you before you go up. You learn them from whoever trained you, if you are lucky enough to get a good one, and you follow them because the alternative has a body count. There are 4 of them, 4 rules that have nothing to do with fire danger ratings or radio protocol or how to read a psychrometer. 4 rules that exist because something is out there, in this particular stretch of forest, that the district has never once acknowledged in any official capacity. I'm about to describe all 4 of them to you in more detail than anyone has ever described them to me. While I talk, I want you sitting with 3 questions, because I never got a full answer to any of them, and by the end you will understand why nobody up here bothers asking anymore. What could possibly be out there that requires rules like these, rules a federal agency would never put its name on? Why has nobody ever sat me down and explained the actual reasoning behind a single one of them? And the third question, the one that is going to matter most by the time I finish talking tonight, is why any of this should concern you at all, a person who has probably never come within 100 miles of a fire lookout tower in your life. I think you will understand that last one before we are through. Meeting Alaric and the mountain. I am 27 years old. I took this job when I was 20, and I have come back every fire season since, which makes this my 7th year on this mountain. A fire season up here runs from early June, once the snowpack finally clears the access road, until sometime in October, when the first real snow starts sticking and the district pulls us down before that same road closes behind us. 4 months of the year I live in a room that measures 14 feet by 14 feet, sitting on top of a steel tower 41 feet off the ground. The other 8 months I live somewhere else and try to remember how to be around people again. I did not get this job the normal way. I never applied through the seasonal hearing system the Forest Service runs every winter, the one where you compete against 600 other applicants for maybe 40 positions across an entire region. I got this job because a man named Emmett Voss walked into the district office in person and told them he wanted me specifically, and the district let him have his way because nobody else wanted this particular tower. That detail should have told me something. It did not at the time. I was 20 years old, and the number they quoted me was almost double what the other lookout positions in that district were offering, something the paperwork called a remoteness differential. I needed money more than I needed to ask questions. I found out later that Tower L7A has one of the highest turnover rates of any fixed lookout in the region, and that the differential exists because the district has a hard time keeping anybody up here longer than a season or 2. I did not know any of that when I signed the paperwork. I just saw the number. Emmett met me at the trailhead the day I hiked up for my first season. He was somewhere past 60 by then, solid through the shoulders and forearms, the kind of build that comes from 4 decades of manual labor at altitude, because that is exactly what he had done. Before I had even set my pack down inside the tower, before he had shown me the wood stove or the radio or the Osborne firefinder we used to take bearings on smoke, he told me one thing, and he told it to me like it mattered more than anything else he was about to teach me that week. If the radio ever calls your name in a voice you do not recognize, do not answer it. Do not ask who is speaking. Just let it go quiet on its own. I asked him why. He looked at me for a long moment, the kind of look a person gives you when they are deciding whether you are ready to hear something. And then he said we would get to why later. We never really did. The tower itself does not behave the way a tower should. I do not say that lightly, and I am not going to dress it up. There are 42 steps on the staircase leading up to the catwalk. I have counted them more times than I can tell you, because somewhere around my second season I started needing to count them, every single time, and some nights they come out to 41 instead. Not always. Not even often. Often enough that I stopped assuming I had miscounted. The horizon does something similar. I know the shape of that ridgeline from the window better than I know my own hands, and there are mornings when it sits 2 or 3 degrees off from where it sat the evening before. I have never been able to explain why. Emmett never explained it either. He just told me which readings to trust and which ones to write off, and I learned to do the same without asking why the number kept changing. He trained me the same way he warned me about the radio. Follow the instruction. Do not ask for the reasoning. I want you to understand that this was not because Emmett did not respect me enough to explain things. I think now that he did not have the reasoning to give me anymore. I think he had stopped needing it himself a long time before I ever met him, the same way I have mostly stopped needing it now. That is who I am talking to tonight, by the way. My name is Alaric, and the man sitting across from me right now, working on his second cup of coffee, and pretending he is not nervous about the fact that we are headed out on night patrol in a few hours, is Milo Bennett. This is his first season. He is 22, came up from a fire crew down in California looking for something with less smoke in his lungs. And for 6 weeks now, he has done everything I have told him to do without much pushback, which is exactly the kind of new hire this job needs. Milo, I am not telling you this to scare you before we go out there tonight. I am telling you because you need to hear all 4 rules the way I heard them, in order, with the reasons I actually have for them, which is not the same thing as the reasons that are true. You are doing the thing again, Milo said, where you sound like you are about to tell me not to worry about something, right before you tell me something worth worrying about. That is probably fair, I told him. Here they are, all 4 before I walk you through where they came from. Rule 1. Never eat any fruit that grows wild in this forest, no matter how it looks or how hungry you are. Rule 2. Never bring anything up this tower that means something to you personally. No photographs, no keepsakes, no letters. Rule 3. Never photograph a deer. Not with your phone, not with a camera, not for any reason at all. Rule 4. If you ever see a wounded animal cross what we call the third ridge, you let it go. You do not follow it. You do not touch it. You do not try to help it. That is the whole list. 4 rules, and every one of them is going to sound insane to you until I finish explaining where they came from. The history of Tower L7A. Tower L7A went up in 1933, built by a civilian conservation corps crew that spent most of that summer packing lumber and glass panes up a trail that did not officially exist yet. I have seen the original construction log, or what is left of it, sitting in a folder at the district office that nobody has touched in years. Most of what is in there reads exactly like you would expect. Material lists, weather delays, a note about a mule that went lame on the switchbacks. One entry, dated the week they finished the tower, does not read like the rest. It describes a short ceremony the crew performed before they left the mountain. 4 men, standing at the base of the tower at dusk, each one placing a stone at a different corner of the foundation. The log does not explain why. It just records that it happened, in the same flat, procedural tone the rest of the entries use for weather delays and lame mules. Whatever those men understood about this mountain in 1933, they understood it well enough to build something into the foundation on purpose. Nobody since has been able to tell me what that something was. The phrase you hear old-timers in this line of work use, if you get one talking long enough, is pass through. The idea is that this stretch of forest is not a place things lie. It is a place things move through, on their way from somewhere to somewhere else. Emmett explained it to me using a hallway. A hallway is not a room. It is the space you cross to get from one room to another, and it does not care whether you are standing in it, so long as you are only passing through the same way it expects everything else to pass through. The moment you start treating a hallway like a room, setting up a chair in it, deciding to live there, you become an obstacle to whatever else still needs to use that hallway. Most hallways do not have a polite way of asking you to move. That is the frame Emmett gave me for all 4 rules, long before he gave me the rules themselves. This forest is a hallway. We are allowed to stand in it because our job requires standing in it. The rules exist to keep us out of the way of whatever else is passing through. I told you Emmett trained me. What I have not told you yet is that by the time he trained me, he had already put in 35 seasons on this exact mountain. He started in 1988, back when the tower still ran on a hand-cranked telephone line instead of a radio, and he kept coming back every June after that for 35 years straight before I ever met him. I was there for his last 2 seasons, which brought his total to 37, a record nobody else in this district has come close to touching. I watched him work this tower better than I will ever manage to work it, calm in a way I still have not learned, like the mountain had stopped being able to surprise him sometime around his 20th year up here. And then, near the end of that 37th season, he was gone. I do not mean he retired. I do not mean he hiked out early because of a health scare, though that is what the official incident report says, because that is the kind of language you can write in an incident report and have it make sense to somebody sitting at a desk 3 states away. I mean, I came up for a routine radio check one morning in late September and got no answer, and when the district sent me and another lookout up to check on him, the tower was empty. His pack was still there. His boots were still by the door. The wood stove had gone cold sometime in the last day or 2. There was no sign he had walked out under his own power, and no sign anything had dragged him out against his will either. He was just gone. No pack dragged off. No struggle. Nothing left out of place except the fact of him not being there anymore. He left a journal behind. I still have it. Most of it is exactly what you would expect from 37 years of fire season logs, weather notes, smoke reports, an occasional complaint about a supply drop running late. The last few entries read differently than the rest, and I want to read you a little of what he wrote, because I think it matters more than anything I could tell you myself. One entry, dated about 2 weeks before he disappeared, says this: I think I did the thing I always told them not to do. I do not remember which one. That part scares me more than doing it. Another entry a few days later is shorter. Cannot find yesterday. Not lost the memory of it. Cannot find the day itself, like it is not in the stack anymore. The last entry he ever wrote, the night before the radio went quiet for good, is 4 words. Something is using my key. Milo was quiet for a second after I read him that last line. Did anybody ever find him, he asked. Emmett, I mean, after. No, I said, 7 years now, not a boot print, not a scrap of clothing, nothing. I do not know which of the 4 rules Emmett broke. I have had 6 years to think about it, and I still do not know. I know he was not a careless man, which tells me it was probably not the kind of mistake you catch yourself making in the moment. My best guess is that he made a mistake so small he never registered it as one, and the mountain did not care how small it was. I am telling you all of this before I walk you through the rules themselves, Milo, because I want you to understand something going in. Nobody in this line of work lasts very long once they start believing they understand why these rules exist. The moment you think you have the reasoning figured out is usually the moment you decide you are the exception to it. Emmett did not have that problem for 35 years. Whatever finally caught up with him, I think it is more likely it just waited him out. So let us go through them, all four, in order. I will tell you exactly what I know, which is less than you are probably hopping for. Rule 1. Never eat the wild fruit. Rule 1. You do not eat anything that grows wild in this forest. Not a berry, not a root, not fruit hanging low enough to reach without climbing. It does not matter how hungry you are. It does not matter how safe it looks. Emmett explained the reasoning behind this one better than he explained any of the others, maybe because it is the rule that nearly killed him too, long before I ever met him. He used to compare it to an old story, one you probably heard some version of in school, about a girl taken into the ground who only had to stay there because she ate a few seeds from a fruit she had been told not to touch. The exact story does not matter as much as the shape of it. Eating something that grows in a place like this is not just eating. It is accepting an invitation you did not know you had been offered, and once you accept it, the terms of your visit change whether you agree to the change or not. You stop being a guest passing through. You become something this forest considers a resident, and residents do not get escorted out when the season ends. The fruit itself, when it shows up, does not look like anything you would find in a grocery store or an ordinary patch of wild blackberries. It runs a deep, near black-red, thick-looking, wet-looking even on days the air has gone bone dry by 10 in the morning. It carries a smell that reaches you from 20 or 30 feet away, sweet in a way that pulls at you before you are anywhere near the plant itself. Dew sits heavy on the skin of it, hours after sunrise, on mornings when everything else on the mountain has already dried out completely. I have never once seen it growing in the same spot twice. I nearly ate some during my first season, about 6 weeks in. I want to walk you through exactly what happened, because the details matter more than the summary. It had been a long day. We had 3 separate lightning strikes to track that afternoon, hours of taking bearings, calling them in, cross-checking them against the map. And by the time I finished my rounds on the catwalk that evening, I was hungry in the specific way you get hungry after skipping every meal since breakfast. I was walking a stretch of trail below the tower I had already walked probably 30 times that season. Checking a rain gauge we kept a quarter mile out, and I came around a bend and saw a low bush I did not remember being there, heavy with fruit exactly like what I just described. I want to be honest with you. My first reaction was not suspicion. My first reaction was that I was tired and hungry, and here was food, right at eye level, close enough that I did not even have to bend down for it. I reached out. My fingers were maybe 4 inches from one of the berries before something in the back of my mind caught up with the rest of me. It was the wrong time of year. I knew the plants on this mountain well enough by then to know that nothing fruits in the second week of July around here. Not this early, not this heavy. Everything that produces fruit on this slope does it in late August at the earliest. Underneath that thought came a second one, slower and colder. I had walked this exact stretch of trail every single day for 6 weeks. Deer moved through here constantly. I had seen their tracks in the soft dirt on both sides of the trail more times than I could count, and deer will eat almost anything green on a mountain like this. Not one track anywhere near this bush. Not one bite mark on a single berry. Every animal on this slope that ate constantly, all summer long, indiscriminately, had apparently decided to leave this one bush alone. I pulled my hand back. My hand was shaking, and I stood there for a long moment just looking at the bush, feeling the specific kind of fear that shows up after you almost do something, not during it. Nothing happened. The bush did not move, did not react, did not do anything except sit there being exactly as red and exactly as sweet smelling as it had been 30 seconds earlier, when I still thought it was just fruit. I told Emmett about it that night over the radio. He did not say much. He asked me if I had touched it, and when I told him no, he told me to leave it alone and let it be. Then he said the only thing about that rule he ever explained to me in plain terms. This forest only needs you to eat once. Rule 2. Never bring anything personal up the tower. Rule 2. You do not bring anything up this tower that means something to you personally. No photographs of people you love. No gifts somebody gave you. No letters, no rings, no keepsakes, nothing that carries weight beyond its actual physical use. This one is harder to follow than it sounds, because most people do not realize how much of what they pack is sentimental until somebody makes them think about it directly. The reasoning, as much as Emmett ever gave me one, is that carrying something you are emotionally attached to up this tower works like leaving a scent trail for something that is already paying more attention to you than you would like. It notices what you care about, and once it notices, it starts working to keep you close to whatever you brought. The early signs are small. You forget where you set something down 5 minutes ago. You forget whether you already logged a weather reading you definitely just logged. Then it gets bigger. Days start running together. You lose track of whether it is Tuesday or Thursday, and it stops bothering you the way it should. And somewhere past that point, the wanting to leave just stops. Nothing is forcing you to stay. The part of you that used to want to go home has quietly gone somewhere else. I never had to learn this one through my own mistake, and I am grateful for that, because the person I did learn it through did not get to walk away from it. There was a lookout named Denny Marsh, stationed 2 ridges over, close enough that we kept a regular radio schedule together most seasons. Morning check-in around 6:30, evening check-in around 8. Denny was maybe 5 years older than me, quiet, easy to talk to over the radio, the kind of easy that comes from months of having nobody else to talk to. He had lost his mother a couple years before he started this job, and he carried a cassette tape up to his tower every season, a recording of her reading him bedtime stories when he was a kid, made on some old home recorder his family had back in the 80s. He played it most nights before he went asleep. He told me once it was the only thing that made his tower feel less empty. I want to tell you how this went, in order, because the way it happened is part of why it scared me as much as it did. About 6 weeks into that season, our morning check-in started sounding a little different. Small things at first. Denny would tell me the same story about a hawk he had seen the day before, then tell me the exact same story again the next morning, word for word, as if he had forgotten he had already told me. I let it go the first time. People repeat themselves. It kept happening, and it started getting stranger. He mentioned a supply drop that was not scheduled for another 11 days, as though it had already come and gone. He got the day of the week wrong 3 mornings running, not off by 1 day the way a person loses track late in a long season, but scrambled, Tuesday and Friday, no longer meaning anything specific to him at all. I asked him directly on the 3rd morning of this if he was doing okay. He said he was fine, said he was just tired, and then he told me about the cassette tape, told me he had been playing it every night, sometimes twice, because it was the only thing that still felt familiar to him up there. I got a cold feeling in my stomach when he said that. Emmett had told me the rule about personal items my very first week, and I had not put it together yet that this might be exactly what was happening to Denny, live, over the radio, while I listened. I reported it to the district that same day. They did not have anyone available to hike out and check on him for 2 full days, which is normal for that district. Response times out here run slow, since everything is hours from a road. A man named Roy Aldana, who packed supplies between stations for the Forest Service, volunteered to go with me, and we hiked out to Denny's tower together on the 3rd morning after I had made the call, when Denny had missed both his morning and evening check-ins the day before. It took us most of the day to reach his station. The door was unlocked, which was not unusual since lookouts rarely lock their doors out here. The radio was on, sitting on the small desk by the window, still powered, humming with the low static you get between transmissions. Denny's pack was there. His boots were there by the door. Sitting on top of the desk next to the radio was the cassette tape, placed flat and centered and perfectly straight, in a spot Denny had never once described keeping it in. He always told me he kept it in his coat pocket, close to him, not sitting out on a desk like something on display. There was no sign of a struggle, no broken glass, no overturned furniture, nothing knocked loose or dragged. Roy checked the outhouse, checked the water cache, checked the trail in both directions for maybe 200 yards. Nothing. This was starting to feel familiar, and that was the worst part. Pack there, boots there, nothing missing except a person. We reported it that evening. The search that followed lasted 11 days and covered a radius the incident commander called more than reasonable for a person on foot in that terrain. They found nothing. No boot prints past the tower, no clothing, no sign he had gone into the creek or off a ledge. Nothing to explain how a grown man vanishes out of a room with an unlocked door and a still running radio. I think about that cassette tape sitting there more than I think about almost anything else from those 7 years. Somebody put it there. Denny did not leave it out like that. Not ever. Not once in all the mornings he told me about it. Something had moved it, arranged it, set it where it could be found, the way you might leave something out for whoever comes looking, so they understand exactly what happened and exactly why. Milo did not say anything for a while after that. Then he asked the question I probably would have asked too, the first time I heard this story. Did you ever find out what happened to the tape? No, I told him. Nobody ever went back for it. The district decommissioned that station 2 seasons later and pulled the building down. Whatever happened to that cassette happened without anybody watching. Emmett told me once, a long time before any of this happened to Denny, that the tower does not make you leave. It just stops making you want to. Rule 3, never photograph the deer. Rule 3, you do not photograph a deer in this forest. Not with a camera, not with your phone, not for a good reason and not for a bad one. If you see a deer, you look at it if you have to, then you look away and you let it keep doing whatever it is doing. This is the rule that took the most explaining, and it is the rule that cost me the most to learn. So I want to walk you through the reasoning first, the way Emmett gave it to me, before I tell you what happened to a man I trained myself. The deer up here, according to Emmett, and according to what I have seen with my own eyes since, are not always just deer. Most of them are, most of the time, ordinary animals doing ordinary animal things, and you would never know the difference by looking. Every so often, one of them is something else, using a deer's body the way a person might use a borrowed coat, moving through this stretch of forest on its way somewhere else, the body itself just a way to travel rather than a place to live in. Emmett called them borrowed skins. He said the phrase was not his, that he had heard it from the lookout who trained him back in the early 90s, a man whose name I never learned, passed down that way for longer than anyone currently working these towers can trace. The tell, if you know to look for it, is stillness. A normal deer on this mountain is never still for long. It is always working, ears turning, head dropping to feed, tail flicking at flies, weight shifting between legs. A deer that is something else stands motionless for far longer than any animal holds a position without a reason to. No ear turning, no weight shift, nothing. And it looks at you directly, holding the look, not the quick startled glance a real deer gives before deciding whether to bolt, but a sustained, deliberate stare that does not belong to a prey animal, since prey animals do not have a reason to hold a predator's gaze the way this does. Emmett's theory, for whatever it is worth, was that photographing one of these mid-crossing interrupts something about the journey it is on. The cost of that interruption does not fall on the deer. It falls on whoever took the picture. Something about being photographed at that exact moment makes your own image vulnerable in the same way, easy to copy, easy to replace. And once that happens, Whatever comes wearing your face afterward is not guaranteed to still be you underneath it. I trained a young man named Desmond Aka for 2 seasons before this one. Desmond was 23, came from a family in Georgia that had never had anyone work a job like this before, and he was proud of it in a way that showed constantly. He talked about his mother a lot, told me she called every Sunday at the same time using the satellite phone line we kept for emergencies, since cell service does not reach most of this mountain, and he always wanted something new to tell her. Pictures mostly. He wanted pictures of the tower, the view, the wildlife, anything he could send her once he got back to a real signal, so she would understand what he actually did up here instead of just hearing him describe it over a bad connection once a week. I told him about the 4 rules the same way Emmett told me, in order, with as much explanation as I actually had. I told him Rule 3 specifically, more than once, because I could already see the kind of person he was, the kind who would want a good picture badly enough to forget himself for a second. He told me he understood. I believed him. I still believe he meant it when he said it. About 6 weeks into his first season, on an evening in late July, Desmond radioed me from his tower, which sat close enough to mine that we could reach each other without relay most nights. It was around 9 in the evening, close to dark, and he told me there was a deer standing directly below his tower, right at the base of the stairs, which was strange on its own, since deer do not typically come that close to a structure with a person moving around inside it. He said it was looking straight up at his window. He said it had not moved in several minutes. I knew immediately what he was describing. I told him, as clearly and as fast as I could over the radio, do not photograph it, step back from the window, do not raise your phone. I said it twice, because the first time I said it I heard a small sound come through the radio I recognized right away. The specific shutter sound a phone makes even with the volume down, since the vibration of the click still travels through a phone speaker, even in silent mode, if you are holding the radio close enough to it. He had already taken the picture before I finished my sentence. He came back on the radio a few seconds later, sounding sheepish, said he knew, said he was sorry, said he just could not help it. It was such a clean shot and he wanted something to send his mother. I told him not to send it to anyone, not to look at it again, to delete it if he could. He said he would. I do not know if he actually did, and by the time it would have mattered, it did not matter anymore either way. For the first few days after that night, nothing seemed wrong. That is part of what made this so hard to catch. Emmett had told me the change does not happen all at once. It creeps in around the edges of a person first, small enough that you talk yourself out of noticing it. The first thing I noticed was a phrase. Desmond had a habit, something he had done since I first started training him, of ending certain radio calls with the same sign off. Copy that, over and out, said in a specific rhythm, fast, almost run together. About 4 days after the deer, I noticed he had started saying it slower, more deliberately, spacing the words out like he was reading them off a card instead of saying something he had said 1,000 times without thinking about it. I told myself he was just tired. Lookouts get tired. It happens to everyone by midsummer. The second thing came from another lookout in our network, a woman named Priya Chandrasekaran, working a station about 6 miles south, who mentioned over a group radio check that she had seen Desmond hiking the ridge trail near her tower that afternoon, waved at him, gotten a wave back. I knew that could not be right, because I had been on the radio with Desmond myself not 20 minutes before that same conversation, and he had told me he was doing weather readings from his own catwalk, 6 miles in the other direction. I did not say anything to Priya about it right away. I told myself radios play tricks with timing sometimes, that maybe I had misremembered which call came first. I want to be honest about something. I did not want to believe what I was starting to suspect, because believing it meant something had already happened to someone I had spent a whole season teaching, someone I liked, someone who talked about his mother every single week like she was the best part of his life. It is easier to explain away 3 small things than it is to accept what 3 small things are telling you. So for almost a week, I explained them away. The thing that finally made it impossible to explain away happened on a Sunday evening. During the hour Desmond always talked to his mother on the satellite line. He radioed me right after, which he did most Sundays, wanting to talk for a few minutes about how the call went, since I was usually the only person he had spoken to in person more than a handful of times, and he treated me a little like an older brother because of it. He told me the call had gone fine, told me his mother was doing well, and then he mentioned, in passing, that she had asked him again about the tattoo. Desmond did not have a tattoo. I knew that for a fact, because I had processed his gear checklist at the start of the season, which includes a basic physical description for identification purposes in case of an emergency in the field. And I remembered specifically that the form listed no markings, and I remembered him joking about it, saying his mother would disown him the day he ever got one. There was no tattoo for her to ask about. There had never been a conversation about a tattoo between them, not that he had ever mentioned to me, not in an entire season of him telling me nearly everything his mother said to him every single Sunday. I asked him carefully, keeping my voice as even as I could manage, what tattoo he meant. There was a pause on the radio, longer than a normal person takes to answer a simple question, and then he said, in that same slow, deliberate rhythm I had noticed creeping into his sign-off, of course, the one on my arm, "You have seen it." I have seen Desmond Akaffer's arms more times than I can count, over an entire season of shared gear checks and shared meals during supply drops. Neither arm had a mark on it larger than a mosquito bite. I did not argue with him over the radio. I want you to understand why, because it matters. Emmett had told me, a long time before this, that if you ever suspect something is wearing someone you know, you do not confront it directly while it still believes you do not know. You end the conversation the way you always would, and then you act. So I told him good night, same as any other Sunday, told him I would check in with him in the morning, and I sat in my tower afterward with my hands shaking. This was worse than the fruit had been. That had been something I almost did to myself. This was something that had already been done to somebody else, and I did not know how long it had already been happening, or what, if anything, was left of the man I had trained. I radioed the district that night and reported a wellness concern, about as much as you can say over an open channel without sounding like you belong in a hospital instead of a fire tower. They sent 2 people out the next morning, along with me, to check on Desmond in person. It took us until early afternoon to reach his station. He was there when we arrived. He looked exactly like Desmond, moved like Desmond, even smiled the way Desmond always smiled, easy and a little goofy, glad for the company. He asked why we had hiked all the way out, said everything was fine. And for one very bad moment, I wondered if I had imagined the whole thing, if grief and isolation had made me suspicious of a man who had done nothing except get slower with his radio sign-offs. Then one of the men who had come with us, someone who did not know any of the backstory, someone who was just there to do a basic welfare check, asked Desmond a routine question, the same question they ask every lookout during a check like this. What is your emergency contact's relationship to you? It is on a form. It is about as unremarkable a question as exists in this job. Desmond answered instantly, without hesitation, the way you answer something you have said 100 times. He gave a name. It was not his mother's name. It was not a name I recognized at all. And when the man cross-checked it against Desmond's actual paperwork right there on a clipboard, the listed emergency contact was, in fact, his mother, first name and all, a name Desmond had said out loud to me personally more times than I could count over an entire season of Sunday calls. That was the moment it stopped being a suspicion. The thing standing in front of us, wearing every physical detail of a man I had trained myself, did not actually know who his own mother was. It did not run. It did not fight. The moment the 3 of us stood there silent, looking at it with the specific look you give something once you have stopped pretending you do not know what it is, it simply stopped being there. There was no flash, no sound, nothing dramatic. 1 second there was a shape standing on the catwalk wearing Desmond's face. The next second there was not, no struggle, nothing dragged, nothing broken. 3 towers now. 3 clean rooms with nobody left in them. The search that followed found the real Desmond nowhere. Not at his tower, not on any trail within a reasonable radius, not at any of the water sources or supply caches in the area. Investigators later found evidence, based on radio log timestamps and satellite phone billing records, that the real Desmond likely had not spoken on that satellite line himself in at least 9 days, meaning every conversation with his mother, every one of those Sunday calls he described to me afterward in such warm detail, had been happening between her and something else long before I ever noticed a change in his sign-off. 9 days. That is how long something wore a man I trained before 3 small mistakes finally gave it away. And I have never stopped thinking about how many more days it might have gotten if it had simply remembered one made-up detail about a tattoo a little more carefully. Milo had not said anything through most of that story. When I finished, he sat there for a second, then asked, quietly, if I still thought about Desmond much. Every single season, I told him, especially in July. I need you to hear this part clearly, Milo, because it is the whole reason Rule 3 exists in the first place. Never assume a familiar face means the person behind it is still who you think they are. Not out here. Maybe not anywhere, but out here especially. Rule 4. Never follow a wounded animal past the 3rd ridge. Rule 4. If you ever see a wounded animal cross what the lookouts around here call the 3rd ridge, you let it go. You do not follow it. You do not touch it. You do not try to help it, no matter how much your instincts are telling you to do exactly that. I am going to tell you about this one a little differently than the others, because this did not happen years ago. It happened today, this morning, a few hours before you and I sat down to have this conversation. The 3 ridges out past the tower do not have official names on any map the district hands out. Lookouts numbered them that way generations ago. 1st ridge, 2nd ridge, 3rd ridge, because it was faster to say over a radio than whatever the actual topographic name was. And the habit stuck the same way most habits stick out here, since nobody ever had a reason to change it. The 3rd ridge sits about 2.5 miles out from the tower, a long, low spine of rock and timber you can see clearly from the catwalk on a clear day. Emmett told me my first season that the 3rd ridge is not just a landmark, it is a line. Everything on our side of it belongs, at least a little, to the world you and I understand. Everything past it belongs to something else, and animals crossing it hurt are not running from danger the way a wounded animal runs everywhere else on this mountain. They are going home. Once an animal crosses that line hurt, it stops being an injured creature that needs help. Emmett's word for it was returning, and he was firm about what that meant in practice. You do not chase it to put it out of its misery. You do not chase it because you feel bad for it. You do not chase it because a lifetime of being a decent person has trained you to believe a suffering animal is something you are supposed to fix. Past that ridge, it is not yours to fix anymore, and reaching for it anyway is the closest thing to trespassing that exists in this line of work. This morning, you and I were about 1.5 miles out on the standard patrol loop, checking the rain gauge and doing a visual sweep of the drainage before the heat built up for the day. You remember the moose, a young bull, not fully grown, with a front leg clearly broken, hanging wrong below the knee in a way that should have made it favor the leg completely, maybe even go down with every other step. It did not move like an animal in that kind of pain. That is the detail I want you to sit with because you noticed it too. I watched you notice it even before I said anything. It moved steadily, almost evenly, as though the leg was not slowing it down the way a break like that should. It was not panicked, not thrashing or bawling the way an injured animal usually does. It was heading in one direction, toward the 3rd ridge, with something that looked far less like instinct and far more like intention. You started following it. I understand why. You have the kind of decency that made you want to help a suffering animal find its way to easier ground, or at least see it through to wherever it was going. in case it needed help getting there. I let you get maybe 30 yards before I said anything, because I needed you to watch it move that way for yourself before I explained why we were not going to keep observing it from a comfortable distance and calling the job done. When I told you to stop, you did not understand at first. You looked back at me the way a person looks at someone who has said something unreasonable, and under normal circumstances, wanting to help an animal that is clearly hurting is about as reasonable as a person can get. I had to grab your arm, right at the base of that last stretch before the ridge, and tell you, as flatly as I could manage, that if you took 10 more steps in that direction, I could not promise you would come back down this mountain the same as you went up it. Why not, you asked me. It is just an animal. It is not, I told you, not anymore, not once it decided to go that way. You stopped. I felt how tense your arm was under my hand, and I understand that tension because I have felt it myself more than once over 7 seasons of watching things cross that line. The moose stopped too, right at the ridge, close enough that we could still see it clearly. It turned its head and looked directly at us and held that look far longer than any animal should hold eye contact with something it has every reason to fear. Ears did not turn. Weight did not shift. It just watched us, the way Emmett had once told me the deer do it, and I understood in that moment exactly what he had meant all those years ago. We stood there, both of us, not moving, not speaking, for what felt like several minutes, though I doubt it was actually that long. Then it turned and continued over the ridge, and somewhere in that last stretch of its movement, at a distance where we should have still been able to see it clearly for another 20 or 30 seconds at minimum, it was simply gone. You asked me, right after, if we should report an injured moose to anyone. I told you no, and I watched you turn that answer over for a second, since normally we absolutely would report exactly that kind of sighting during patrol. I told you we would talk about it tonight before patrol. Here we are. That is the whole rule, Milo. Some things you only need to let go of. Out here, that is the only kindness this forest allows you to give. What every rule costs. That is the last of them. 4 rules, and I have told you everything I actually know about why they exist, which I will remind you one more time is not the same thing as understanding them completely. I do not think anyone ever will. Emmett paid for whatever he learned about this mountain with 37 seasons, and then his own disappearance at the end of it. Denny paid for a cassette tape he only wanted for comfort. Desmond paid 9 days of his own life to something that learned to answer his mother's questions almost well enough to fool her. I have paid for my 7 seasons with a few close calls of my own, the fruit being the worst of them. And I plan on walking away from this mountain in October the same way I have walked away every year since I started, in one piece, remembering my own name. That is what I want you to take from tonight more than the fear of it. These rules work. Every single time I have followed them, I have come down off this mountain fine. Every person I have told you about who did not come down fine broke one of them, or came close enough to breaking one that it did not matter. That is not bad luck. As far as I can tell, that is cause and effect, the same as anything else in this job. You follow the rules, you get to go home. I intend on going home this October, and I intend on you going home too, right alongside me, because you have been sharp about all 4 of these since the first day I explained them to you, including this morning at that ridge, when it actually counted. I would bet good money this mountain is not the only one that works this way. I have heard enough second-hand stories from lookouts at other districts, told the way people tell you something they do not fully believe themselves, to think there are towers all over this country sitting on top of their own version of this exact arrangement, their own 4 or 5 or 6 rules, their own version of a man like Emmett who trained someone the way he trained me. Nobody writes it down. Nobody puts it in a manual. It just gets passed hand to hand, season to season, the same way I am passing it to you tonight, Milo. And if you are the one listening to this and you have never set foot near a fire tower in your life, I would guess you have still got a place like this one somewhere in your own life. Maybe it is not a mountain. Maybe it is a building you work in, a stretch of highway you drive late at night, a job with its own version of rules nobody official ever explained to you either. Every place like that runs on something, whether anyone ever tells you what, or why, or how they figured it out. I'm not going to tell you this gets less strange the longer you do it. I am going to tell you it gets more manageable, which is not the same thing, but it is enough. You know the 4 rules cold. You have already proven today, out at that ridge, that you can hold yourself back from your own good instincts when it actually counts. That is the whole job, Milo. Not bravery, just discipline, applied consistently every single season, for as long as you decide to keep coming back up this mountain. Believe whatever you want about the rest of what I have told you tonight. I am not asking you to take my word for any of it beyond the part that matters, which is simple enough to say in one sentence. Follow the 4 rules and you get to go home. I have been doing this 7 years, and I am still here to tell you about it. Let us get our gear together. It is almost dark. Milo stood up, checked his headlamp, clipped his radio to his belt the way I had shown him his first week. I did the same. We stepped out through the tower door together, onto the catwalk, down the stairs, Milo counting them under his breath without meaning to, the way I still do too. 42, he said when we hit the ground. 42, same as always. I did not tell him that was not always true. Some nights are just 42 nights. We started down the trail together, into the part of the evening where the light goes but the heat does not leave yet, and somewhere out past the 3rd ridge, something that has never once been given a name by anyone I have ever met was already moving, the way it has been moving every single night for longer than any of us have been alive to notice it.